We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Hello and welcome!
Hello and welcome.
Welcome, listeners. You guys are listening to the Nerd Out With Me 90s cast, where we go 120 episodes through the 1990s from January 1990 through December 1999. What are we talking about, Tig?
We are talking about movies, TV, video games, music, shoes, glasses.
Oh my goodness.
And food.
All sorts of 90s stuff. Every week we're advancing forward a month. And this week, for what is this? Episode 22, 23? Oh no, duh. It's episode 24. I mathed really well there. We're in December of 1991. So isn't that exciting?
It is, because we've made it 2 years.
That's true.
The 90s.
That is true, which means we are 1/5 of the way through this task we've set for ourselves. So that's not too bad. 20%, right?
I'm impressed.
Yeah, we're actually doing this via Skype this week. It's a rare thing. We don't tend to do episodes via Skype, but circumstances have forced our hand. The good news, is that thanks to the generous support of our Patreon folks, starting with next week's episode, January of 1992, we are going to sound much, much better.
Thank God.
Yes, indeed. I know the audio has been sort of on and off in the show, occasionally good, occasionally a bit sketchy, but we have some very beautiful new mics that we're going to be using, and that should help things quite a bit.
So thank you to them.
Yes. What won't help things quite a bit is if we use any Patreon money to buy more booze than is necessary, because, oh boys, listeners who heard some of last week's episode might know some of those long recording sessions are long indeed.
Yeah, that was bad.
Well, these things will happen. So December of 91, it's going to be an all movie episode this week, I think.
That's cool.
If that's okay by you.
Yeah, I like movies.
Good. Because next week, starting in January, we're gonna dive into some video game and geeky stuff. We're gonna geek it up for the next couple of weeks. But this, the holiday season, especially in the early 90s, was always big with movies. And you were definitely a movie guy in the early 90s.
I am a movie guy.
That's right. Still, of course. We got a couple of big ones this week. For our bonus episode, we're going to talk about several movies that came out this month, including Last Boy Scout, Father of the Bride, and Oliver Stone's JFK, which kind of good timing now that I think about it, considering as we record this just last week, all those JFK documents were released.
Almost all.
Oh wait, that's right, almost all. But we'll get into that in the other episode. We'll talk about in our main episode Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
Ooh.
For you Trek people, and we will also talk about Steven Spielberg's Hook. Before we get into that stuff, there's a slight bit of news from December of 91 to get into, right? Because why not? On December 1st, 1991, Ukrainians voted overwhelmingly for independence from the Soviet Union in a referendum, which was kind of a big deal. And this stuff continued throughout the month. December 8th, leaders of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine met and signed an agreement to end the Soviet Union and establish the Commonwealth of Independent States. December 12th, the Supreme Soviet of the Russian SFSR denounced the Union Treaty of 1922. And December 25th, on Christmas, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned as the president of the Soviet Union, from which most republics had already seceded, anticipating the dissolution of the 74-year-old state. So, and then December 26th, the Supreme Soviet meets for the final time, formally dissolving the Soviet Union.
How crazy is that?
So, a huge deal, right?
That was like, people were like partying in America.
The end of the Soviet Union. You and I had grown up under the, whether real or not, the sort of the threat of the Soviet Union, the Cold War, nuclear war is coming, and the Soviets were our enemies, all this sort of stuff, right? I mean, you remember all the propaganda movies in the 80s that, that we watched and loved? That always involved. Yeah, Red Dawn was a huge childhood favorite of mine. Rambo going to fight the Russians in Afghanistan and all this stuff.
Boxing a Russian in the Soviet Union.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, always the Russian villains. We had the made-for-TV movies like The Last Day. Was that it? Yeah, The Last Day.
Yeah.
All these nuclear war movies, and then boom, all of a sudden, the Soviet Union dissolved. This big, enormous thing that had loomed over us for such a long time disappeared.
It was surreal.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, you think about that. That would be the equivalent of watching the United States dissolve, right, from overseas.
Yeah, like could you imagine that happening now with the internet?
Oh, geez, the internet would explode.
Right? Like if the Soviet Union was still around and then all of a sudden they were like, oh, we're no longer a country. Could you imagine?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are people working to make that happen to the United States right now.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, I think a lot of those people who are working to make that happen come from the same region that was once the Soviet Union. So there's that. And the climate in America makes it seem not too far-fetched that ugly things will happen in the coming years. But, that's a different topic.
Well, yeah, that's just part of, life.
Yeah, but pretty crazy. December of 91, the Soviet Union actually dissolving once and for all, kind of a monumentous thing. I really don't know sort of the age range of our listeners, so I don't know to what extent this was a big deal to them. But there you go, throwing that out there before we get into our movies. So I don't have them in order. What do you want to tackle first, Star Trek or Hook?
Let's hit Hook first.
All right, we'll hit Hook first. So come back in a moment, and we're going to talk some hookers.
The stories are true. He's come back to seek his revenge. Only you can save your children. You must make yourself remember.
Remember what?
Peter, don't you know who you are?
Have to fly. Have to fight. Have to crow. Have to save Maggie. Have to save Jack. Okay, he's back. Who?
All right, we are back. Tig, we have to talk about something.
We have to talk about someone's hook. Did you bring up hookers?
I may have. I possibly may have. In December 1991, a Steven Spielberg movie came out. Usually that's sort of a cause for celebration, right? I mean, Spielberg is terrific.
Right.
Especially when he's doing like whimsical action-adventure movies. He's virtually always terrific. This one is not really considered all that terrific, despite having a pretty amazing cast. Robin Williams, Dustin "Let Me Grab Your Ass" Hoffman, Julia Roberts, plus Bob Hoskins, Maggie Smith. Miss Maggie Smith was in it.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of people. Of course, we're talking about Hook, produced by Kathleen Kennedy. Incidentally, you know who Kathleen Kennedy is?
One of the Kennedys.
She now heads the Star Wars empire.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah. She's the gal who's giving us new Star Wars. She's pretty great. But anyway, yeah, Hook. So Tig, talk to me about Hook. Before you get into that, nominated for 5 Academy Awards.
Yeah, how weird is that?
Yeah, incredibly weird considering it's pretty awful. But anyway, go ahead.
And this is one of those movies I feel like never did any good, and most people will admit that it's terrible, but a lot of people really like it.
Yeah, you mentioned to me off air, and we'll go right to this. You said you have a good friend who's a huge fan of this movie.
I have a friend who loves it, and I'm gonna make sure he listens to this so he can curse and scream when we talk about how bad it is, because he loves it. He constantly quotes it
What? There are quotes from... Really?
Oh, of course.
There are quotes from this movie?
Yeah. He absolutely loves it. I guess he was at the age where he would have been at the perfect age for when it came out, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I think it still has. I think it has a following.
See, that amazes me because it seems sort of close to universal that this is considered one of Spielberg's worst bombs, one of his worst movies. Though, I guess, it does get played on TV a lot. It gets run a lot. It does have Robin Williams, and Robin Williams is pretty awesome. So there's that. It does have Julia Roberts in like a Tinkerbell outfit, so there's that. I don't know.
It was one of those movies that should have been really good, but for some reason, you know what? From what I remember of it, what I didn't like when I first saw it was the fact that it seemed to spend too much time with Robin Williams, the Peter Pan, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It spent so much time in the movie denying that he was Peter Pan.
Oh, right.
I mean, it takes till the end of the movie, basically.
Right, because in this, right, he's an adult. He begins as an adult.
Right. And you forget, and he no longer remembers being Peter Pan.
Is that okay? Is that what it is? Yeah, he didn't recall. It's been a while since I've
yeah,
seen
because
this.
because he grew up.
Oh, you're not allowed to grow up.
Right. Peter Pan was the little kid all the time, you know.
It's sort of implied in the original story, in one of the versions of the original story, because some various versions are kicked around, but it's sort of implied that Peter Pan would kill lost boys who grew up. They would be offed. They would be killed. They didn't have to leave the island. They were actually murdered by Peter Pan.
Right, which is when he comes back, the Lost Boys are trying to kill him.
In this movie, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean in like the original children's story.
Right.
Peter Pan would kill Lost Boys who grew up.
There's
some weird dark stuff in there in the original that a lot of people aren't aware are there. A couple of things that stand out from this, of course, Robin Williams is always kind of entertaining, and this is when Julia Roberts was a huge star. This came a little after Pretty Woman, but one of the most respected actors of the day, dressed up in a goofy pirate's outfit, doing swashbuckling action. I'm not sure what Dustin Hoffman was thinking when he did this.
I didn't think it was the best casting. I didn't think that he really did a good Captain Hook, for at least what I was expecting it to be as a kid. Maybe
he found that Spielberg had hired a lot of teenage girls to work on the staff to help out, and Hoffman was like, yeah, oh yes.
Two-time Oscar winner Dustin Hoffman has been accused of sexually harassing a 17-year-old intern on the set of his 1985 movie Death of a Salesman. Anna Graham Hunter, who wrote a guest column for The Hollywood Reporter, accuses the actor of grabbing her body and making lewd comments.
Dear Lord. Do you know Hook was Gwyneth Paltrow's first film?
I did not know that.
She played the young Wendy.
Really? See,
that's what it says.
I did not know that. So let's see. I had quotes, because you claim that your friend quotes this movie. Like what? I've just had an apostrophe. Did they say that?
Yes. Yes.
There you go. There's one. I think you mean an epiphany. I'm obviously reading a quotes page because I wouldn't remember this stuff.
Right.
I'm not seeing anything else that looks like it might be quotable. There's a whole page of them though. I'm not reading this whole damn page.
And I just found out David Bowie turned down the role of Hook.
Oh, that might have been interesting. I don't know. Now here's a good one. There's a couple who kisses and they begin to float when some magic fairy dust lands on them. I don't know if you remember this scene.
Okay.
But the couple who floats when the fairy dust lands on them, George Lucas and Carrie Fisher.
The what?
It's George Lucas and Carrie Fisher doing a little cameo.
That's real weird.
That's right. Now, interesting because Dame Maggie Smith is in this movie, and she plays like a 92. She plays a 90-something-year-old grandma, which she could do now, but at the time she was only 56, so they aged her with makeup to make her look much older. I like Maggie Smith.
Yeah.
She's pretty great. She's in lots and lots of really good stuff, and she's also in Downton Abbey. So there's that. Spielberg and Robin Williams became good friends on the set of this movie, but unfortunately Spielberg broke Robin Williams' heart, and well, we know what that led to. Oh boy! All right.
Oh God.
Sorry. So when was the last time you saw this?
Oh.
Long time ago.
1991.
Yeah.
I think it popped on TV a couple times, and I tried to watch 5 or 10 minutes of it because of my friend being always talking it up, and I couldn't.
Yeah, I've only watched scenes since then as well. I mean, let's face it, he redeemed himself pretty quickly though, because 2 years later he had 2 movies come out back to back. Small movies, so they weren't super huge, but I think some people might have heard of them: Jurassic Park and then Schindler's List. So I think he bounced back okay.
I think that it was just one of those rare, poorly written, and to be honest, it almost seemed like everybody who acted in it like checked in. Checked in.
Checked out, you mean?
Checked out, I mean. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were there just collecting a paycheck.
It really felt like that. It felt like, and even Robin Williams, who's usually good in everything, everyone just seemed very. They just came in and they left.
Well, the crazy thing is that Spielberg had wanted to do this movie since the early 80s. He was working with Disney on different drafts of this since the 80s. He wanted to do this movie. It's a movie that he allegedly wanted to do.
Which is weird. I wonder who originally wrote it, because the idea of Robin Williams, of somebody playing a grown-up Peter Pan, takes the fun out of an entire story. Nobody wants to see a mopey grown-up Peter Pan.
That's true. The screenplay was by Jim V. Hart and Malia Scotch Mamo, who, let's see, Jim V. Hart, some selected movies that he did the screenplay for. See, Contact, the Jodie Foster movie. It's a great movie.
Okay.
Muppet Treasure Island, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, I don't know, a couple good ones.
That's a weird mix of...
And this Malia person, I'm not seeing too much. And then Story is by that same initial guy, and Nick Castle, who co-wrote Escape from New York. He was the director of Dennis the Menace from 1993, one of the greatest Dennis the Menace movies of all time.
I love that movie. What?
Really?
I love the Dennis the Menace movie with Christopher Lloyd.
Yes.
I love it.
Interesting. He was the writer of Escape from New York, of course, a cult classic, and 1986, The Boy Who Could Fly. So there you go. And he was also he had a couple of small acting roles, but yeah, The Boy Who Could Fly. I remember that.
I don't think I remember that. I'm thinking of the Pearl Jam.
Given to Fly. So speaking of flying, we are going to fly off into the stars for our next segment and talk about Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So come back in a moment.
The Klingon Empire has 50 years of life left to it.
To offer Klingons a safe haven within Federation space is suicide.
They're animals. Jim, they are dying. And you, Captain Kirk, are to be our first olive branch. Me?
The galaxy stands at a crossroads.
This is the Starship Enterprise. We've been ordered to escort you to your meeting on Earth.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
I have so wanted to meet you, Captain. One warrior to another.
Right. On the verge of peace.
The undiscovered country. The future.
On the brink of war.
We come in peace, and you blatantly defy that. We haven't fired.
According to our databanks, we have. I shall blow you out of the stars.
Now, the crew of the Starship Enterprise
will not be the instigators of full-scale war on the eve of universal peace.
They're coming about.
Battle stations.
Fights not to win battles.
Incoming.
Signal our surrender.
Captain?
We surrender!
But to end them forever.
Welcome back, my friends, to the podcast that never ends.
Coming sad.
Right. You know, I saw them live.
Did you?
Yes. Them, of all bands. They were potentially my first ever concert. ELP, Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Wow.
It was not a show that a kid would enjoy. I mean, freaking 15-minute long organ solos. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, God.
So, December 1991, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. This was obviously the sixth movie in the Star Trek series. This followed 1989's The Final Frontier. The Final Frontier is when they meet God. The Undiscovered Country, which is this one, that is what they're referring to. The Undiscovered Country is peace.
Peace with the Klingons.
That's right.
Okay.
Because in this movie, it opens up with the moon exploding. And this is the one that I saw in the theater, not The Final Frontier. This is the one I saw in the theater. So, a Klingon moon explodes. The Klingons blame it on the Federation. And so Captain Kirk and team must go and figure out what happened and figure out how to make peace with the Klingons and so on and so forth. There's assassination attempts and a cool bird of prey, which is a Klingon ship.
Klingon ship, yeah.
That's right. And this is the one where Sulu gets his own ship.
Yes, that was a big deal.
The Excelsior.
Excelsior.
Yep, yeah. Like Sulu getting his own ship. That was actually pretty cool because, Sulu is awesome and it was a cool ship. The Excelsior was like it looked like a big brawny version of the Enterprise.
Right.
So yeah, I actually just relatively recently watched this and all the Star Trek movies. I did for some reason I did a full Star Trek marathon where I watched every Star Trek movie back to back, not the same day.
Wow, how'd that go?
Not the same day, obviously.
Right.
Pretty good, actually. I'm not a huge Star Trek fan. I'm not a Trekker or Trekkie, however they prefer to be referred to these days. I mean, I think Star Trek is fine, but I could take it or leave it. But I kind of wanted to rediscover a couple of them. I think the whole reason why I initially did it was because I wanted to watch the original, the motion picture, which most people pan, and I've always had a really big soft spot for.
Right.
And so I said, well, if I'm going to watch that one, I might as well watch Wrath of Khan next, because Wrath of Khan is awesome. Yeah, Wrath of Khan is fantastic. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to watch those two, I might as well just go and do it.
I always enjoyed the show better than the movies. Yeah,
well, because I guess the show is meant to be episodic, or not episodic. I'm sorry. It's it's like a different story each week, and I guess maybe the show had that low budget charm happening.
I guess because I could sit and watch the original show and obviously Jen, but like Next Generation, but I can watch the original show, but the movies every time even the Next Generation movies.
Yeah, the Next Generation movies aren't that good.
Yeah, like we would just watch. I don't know. I just couldn't get into the movies, but the show I could watch all the time.
Well, I mean, it was a great show, so that's definitely understandable. Maybe it's because by this time, especially by now, by the late 80s and the early 90s, William Shatner's head had swelled to the size of a hot air balloon. And you could practically smell his arrogance coming off the screen. Just a thought, possibly that might be the issue there.
You want to hear a terrible fact about it?
I do.
Okay, so Gene. You obviously know who Gene Roddenberry is, creator of Star Trek. He died 48 hours after seeing an unfinished cut of the film. Of this film.
I did not know that.
He had been unhappy with what he saw and was demanding director Nicholas Meyer recut about a quarter of the movie. The two men parted after an argument, which Meyer later regretted.
Oh, man.
It makes me really sad that the last thing Gene saw of his seminal work made him unhappy.
That is sad.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. This guy built this huge thing that millions of people love. I mean, like I said, I'm not a huge fan, but I understand. Like Trek has a crazily devoted fan base,
right?
Crazily devoted fan base, and I think the reason why their fan base is so devoted is because they've never seen Star Wars, so they don't understand.
They don't understand what real good sci-fi is.
That's right. Well, I don't think Star Wars is real good sci-fi. I think it's good action adventure. It's good science fantasy. It's good,
right.
But yes, obviously Star Wars is my my jam compared to Star Trek. If I had the Trek versus Wars debate, I fall firmly on the Wars side of things, as all wise, intelligent, good-looking, sexually charged people do.
Jesus.
I'm just saying. So, did you ever see this? Did you ever see The Undiscovered Country?
No.
No.
Solid
movie. A little goofy. Yeah. A little good. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, this is what I should do so I can refresh my own memory. Because when I watched this recently, I actually decided to do a blog marathon of them as I was doing it.
Oh, really?
I did some reviews / light criticism of all these films as I was doing this. And if folks go to my website, ericsanjuan.com, and just chuck Star Trek into the search box or something like that, you'll find me talking about all the original Star Trek movies plus all the Next Generation movies. So let me bring up the write-up that I did on this one, refresh my memory a little bit.
While you're looking it up, I'll tell you as a big poster buff, it's one of the coolest posters for all the movies.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does have a pretty cool poster. So here we go. Well, all right. It looks like I approved. Because
I like that you have to read an article you wrote about it to remember if you approved.
I can't remember shit. So yeah, say there's something compelling about the idea of a franchise that's always been about exploring new frontiers, ending its run by exploring a truly undiscovered frontier, peace in our time. It would have been easy and obvious to end things with a grand space adventure, with a galactic war or a massive alien threat that puts Vigor to shame, or with the Enterprise in some far-flung corner of the universe seeing sights we've never seen before. Instead, the Undiscovered Country centers around diplomatic missions, peace talks, and political negotiations. When talks go astray, it becomes equal parts prison story and police procedural, with a heaping helping of Hitchcockian spy movie intrigue to keep the audience guessing until the big climax. This being Star Trek, that sounds like a risky approach. Hell, it is a risky approach. When you know the adventures of this beloved crew are coming to an end, you want to see huge star-spanning quests and gripping starship battles and inventive new threats, right? Sometimes what you think you want is not what you need, though, because despite the somewhat risky approach, The Undiscovered Country ends up being a fantastic way to end the saga of the original crew. So there you go. That's the beginning of my write-up of that. So I guess oh yeah, now I'm looking at the screenshots. That's right. This had what's her name, who went on to be in that Sex and the City, and she was good as a Vulcan in this. But then the dude, and I'm gonna have to Christopher Plummer, General Chang. He played he played a villain, and he was fantastic in this.
Yeah,
he got like an eye patch on and so on. Yeah, real good. That's the other thing I remember from this movie. Captain Kirk's a racist in this movie.
Is he?
Yeah, he's totally a bigot. I mean, granted, he has reason to. He's a bigot because he's been fighting the Klingons his whole life. But right. Yeah, he's totally like an anti-Klingon bigot.
Huh.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. So yeah, that jogs my memory a little bit.
I read a fact on here that Michael Dorn, who plays Worf in the Next Gen,
yes, he plays his own grandfather.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. That's definitely.
You think he got the job because of that role?
Yeah, because the Next Generation was like winding down by the time this came out.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because just a few years after this, the first Next Generation movie came out.
Right.
Generations, which Kirk was in that one. That is the one where Kirk dies.
Right. Yeah,
I think did I tell this story on the show before? I think I have. I saw Generations in the theater as well. The reason why I saw multiple Star Trek movies in the theater despite not being a fan is because a close friend of mine is a huge Star Trek fan, so he would drag me to them.
Right.
And so he took me to see Generations, and I fell asleep shortly into the movie, or maybe halfway through or something like that. I nodded off for a while. I woke up just in time for Kirk's death scene, and when he died, I applauded.
How did that go?
Not well. he was like, "What are you doing?" And people were looking and stuff like that. That guy's an asshole. And admittedly, yeah, I was being an asshole.
Dear Lord.
Yeah. At the time, I was very anti-Trek. Now I have an appreciation for Star Trek. I think it's a pretty interesting world, and rich science fiction world that was put together, and the good stuff is really, really good. And like I said, I'm not a huge Trek fan, but I appreciate it and I respect it for what it is. At the time, though, and I was like this about anything I wasn't into was the worst thing. It sucked, and I had to make fun of it incessantly.
Of course,
because I was a shitty young man. So yeah. So that's my Star Trek story, and I'm sticking to it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there we go. So come back in a moment. We will wrap things up. We will also have... did we already say the news for January 92? I don't know if we did. But anyway, we did.
Yes.
Okay. Then we'll be back in a minute to wrap things up.
I think what others won't think, but I just can't think, but I won't say.
All right, we are back after talking a little bit of movies. We're going to continue our movie talk after we close the door on this. Are we not?
Yeah. What do we? Well, I don't know what movies we're talking about. But.
Oh, for our Patreon subscribers, and you can find us at patreon.com/nerdoutwithme, and for just $2 a month, you get a second episode each and every week. Every single week, we do a second episode. So
it's insane. Eric makes me do it.
His prices are insane. I don't think anyone outside of our region knows that.
Really?
Yeah, I think Crazy Eddie was strictly a Northeast thing, like New York area, New York,
That's
New Jersey,
shame.
probably Massachusetts, I would guess. Yeah. So we're going to continue the movie talk in our bonus episode. We're going to be talking about Father of the Bride, the hilariously cute comedy movie with Steve Martin and Diane Keaton and some other folks. Martin Short was in that as well. We're going to be talking about The Last Boy Scout, directed by Tony Scott, who was actually a pretty good action director with, you'll remember it now when I say this, Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans.
Yeah, I actually saw that movie in the theater when it came out.
Perfect, good one. We'll talk about that. And we will, of course, talk about Oliver Stone's legendary, landmark, and potentially infamous movie JFK on the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So there's that. If for Patreon subscribers, again, Nerd Out With Me, or patreon.com/nerdoutwithme, you'll get that episode. And every single week we do bonus episodes because we are kind of foolish like that. I mean, seriously, really? What were we even thinking? And plus we drop like exclusive videos on there and all sorts of other stuff. So that's neat.
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah. Speaking of that,
we're gonna make a couple of those hopefully next week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We will be doing video recording next week to get more video content on our YouTube channel. And Tig, maybe you should throw like some outtakes from various recording sessions. Just little minute clips and stuff like that, so we can start throwing those to the Patreon folks. Oh, I was going to say, in the meantime, why don't you tell folks where else they can find us?
They can find us on Facebook, Twitter. I like to say Google+.
Google+.
Because, that's real hot with the kids nowadays.
They love it.
Instagram.
Oh, that's right. I never look at our Instagram.
You never go on
Instagram. I don't do Instagram.
And YouTube, obviously.
Yes, look for us on YouTube because there's lots and lots of video content. We do shorter, truncated versions of these podcasts, usually just one segment or a portion of a segment on there. But then, of course, we have video content where what kind of video content do we have?
Oh, man, we often play board games. We have guests on. We had Bootsy Spankins on, and we have people bring on their collections, Transformers and Garbage Pail Kid collections.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat.
Yeah,
stuff.
we basically do honestly whatever we just feel like doing at the time.
That is true. Yeah, that is very true. It's potentially
a mixed bag.
Yeah, some might call it unfocused. We call it perfect. So the good news is that starting next week, starting with our very next episode, we will get a big boost in sound quality. Thanks to the Patreon subscribers, we were able to buy some new equipment, including 2 brand new microphones that will greatly enhance the listening experience for all you peeps out there. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, me too.
Especially you.
I'm looking forward to talking into an actual normal microphone.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had an okay microphone, but it wasn't a good microphone, and oh man, it makes them a bear to edit sometimes these episodes. Yeah,
you have to fight with the levels and stuff.
Oh, geez, yeah, and then yeah. So, but thankfully we won't be dealing with that anymore. We'll sound nice and good and crispy and clean. It's going to be wonderful. So that's coolness. Thanks for listening, everyone. Come back next week. I won't say everything we'll be talking about next week, but I will say one thing. Here's a little tease for you there, Tig. We're going to be talking about Golden Axe 2.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, a little video game talk. I feel like we haven't done that in a couple weeks, and I want to get more nerdy, geeky stuff in there because that's kind of fun. So I think for the next couple of episodes, we're going to be doing a lot of that sort of thing. So, hey, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Here's a choice of food and drink to satisfy anyone and everyone.